So, children, we will be proceeding further with in situ we have done. Now it is ex situ conservation. Much I have written here. Ex situ conservation means off-site conservation. I have already told you what does it mean. Conservation in the natural, artificial habitat, right? The features of ex situ conservation. When you are taking, this is something which is done for a selective species, right, where we are targeting a particular type of animal which is facing much danger, and we have to increase the number of that particular animal. We allow the breeding and mating of such animals. I mean, suppose we see the tigers are reduced in number, so we take few male and female tigers along with, and then we are giving them the favorable environment to mate and to breed so that they can be increased in the number and we can reintroduce them into their natural habitat. So ex situ conservation basically targets a specific species. It's not that a general ecosystem is not conserved here, right? Enemy threat is not there because everything is under human supervision, so human control is there, and in controlled conditions there is no point of having water scarcity, food scarcity. If the animal is diseased, it can be treated by the doctors, so medical care is provided, and the research and experimentation by the scientists, because the animal is encaged, right? In that case, the research and experimentation on these animals can also be done for future concerns, and protection from endangerment is one of the aim. And the last thing is awareness, because we do visit these areas, the ex situ areas, and we do come to know about the detailings of such animal, that from what is their native space, native place where they are found, what is their number, whether they are, what is their status, whether they are threatened or they are safe. We come to know about this, and what is the feeding, what is the habitat, what is the liking, everything is known to us when we visit such areas, right? One thing that you need to add up here, I did not take it in situ conservation. I wrote there that animals, they have the chance of evolution, but when I talk about ex situ, I say that the animals, they don't have a chance of evolution, and they also lose the wild instinct. When you are studying the benefits, you should also be knowing what could be the pros and cons. I mean, in that case, in situ conservation, the wild instinct, since the animal is say staying, or the plant is surviving in the wild habitat, right? So the wild instincts are, the survival of the fittest is the concern there. So wild instinct is maintained. But when you talk about ex situ, so species are pampered, everything is given to the animals or plants without their struggle for getting the resources. So in that case, when these species are pampered, they lose their wild instinct to survive, to struggle for the food and water resource or for their safety, right? So enemy threat is very much prone in such animals when they are reintroduced into the natural habitat, right? And evolution, that means here you bring only 10 or 15 individuals and you allow mate in between. That means there is a very narrow range of genetic diversity in these animals. But when you talk about the wild animals, numbers, I mean, they are present in hundreds or say thousands of number. In that case, a free mating between two individuals basically brings about much variation. The chances of variations are higher in those who are living in wild, and more variation leads to evolution. That means the betterment of a species with respect to its genetical composition, right, children? So just understand that what could be possible when the ex situ is there, what could be possible when in situ conservation is there. Now come to the examples, the ways of ex situ conservation: botanical gardens, wildlife, botanical gardens, zoological gardens, and the gene banks, right? Botanical gardens, the word is quite general, most of you must be knowing. Artificial habitat for conservation of plant species. This is in nutshell, but you go with the way I have written it here, that it aims at the scientific research, because things are under human control. When you have control over the plants and animals, you can use them for education, for research, for conservation, for public visiting, I mean, everything can be done when things are in your hand. So, botanical gardens are basically for plant species. Doesn't matter, sometimes they have endemic species and sometimes they do involve the exotic species too, so that your education is increased when you visit such places, right? And then you talk about the examples. I have given the examples here too, but children, I have included one topic here. Every year when you try solving last 10 years paper, a question comes, what are the list any two problems which are faced by botanical gardens, and children, they tend to ask me, and I tell them verbally, but they don't note it down anywhere, so I thought to include it here in written. Now it's your responsibility to understand what could be the problems with the botanical gardens. If suppose I wish to make one, what are the problems that I would be facing? The first thing is inadequate funding. It needs money, and due to government negligence, government, this is the last agenda for any political leader to run the country, or to encash the people's sentiments, right? Now no one is bothered about construction of a botanical garden. So in that case, very few are there who are actually true environmentalists. So the political interest is actually least here. That's why the inadequate funding and government negligence, both problems are faced by the people who wish to construct such areas. Another thing is the manpower, because manpower and proper management, because when you are trying to construct a botanical area, in that case the plants involved here, each and every plant has its own requirement, and it is very much difficult to create suitable conditions, appropriate environment surroundings for such plants to survive, right? Another one is awareness among the people, because when you visit any botanical garden, it hardly happens. Many a times I have also seen that when people visit such areas, they try to pluck the flower, they try to damage the plant resources that they are watching, right? And this is actually something which is a problem for the plants and problem for the managers too. Another thing is lack of space. Since we already know we don't have space to construct a house, from where we would be getting this space to construct such a large botanical garden? So lack of space is an ever persisting problem. Another one is lack of skilled expertise, because scientifically managed area, it's a scientifically managed area, so scientists, researchers, and even the gardener has to be very much trained, somewhat educated and skilled, so that he understands the requisitions of plants which are conserved there. So I have listed so many problems there. You can mention any two. Children, always remember, if two are asked, always try to write three or four. I'm just giving you a general clue. I always need a backup. There are chances that one out of your two statements could become wrong, and in that case, you should have a backup plan, right? Then you come to zoological gardens. Many things are similar here. The way scientifically the plant resources are managed in botanical garden, here the animals are managed scientifically. They are encaged, or they are actually, you may say, they are within certain boundaries. They are not set free. So when the tourists visit them, they can see animals at a distance. So they are always enclosed within a boundary, right? uh, People, visitors, it is very much economically profitable too, because it generates revenue. When you visit a zoological park, you always take tickets, so it is actually an economic gain. But when you talk about the problems with botanical gardens, similar are the problems with zoological garden too. I have written the examples there too. And then come to gene banks. Now, gene banks is a very important topic with reference. Sometimes it is for 2 marks, sometimes it is for 5 marks. Understand what is it. Any sample, any specimen from plant or animal which can help you to conserve its genetic resource. Suppose if you have to conserve I mean, if you have to protect an animal from being extinct, what we do basically, you must have heard about cloning, using few cells of the parent animal and allowing it to multiply and then generating out a clone. So basically, at the cellular level or at the tissue level, or sometimes if you see for fertilization, the sperm and ovum of the animals, they are also conserved. So at the level of a cell only, things are conserved, and these are conserved in suitable circumstances, like if the low temperature is needed or any kind of say technicality is needed. In that case, I mean, you call such banks where these conditions are generated, they are the gene banks. Sometimes we call them seed banks too. Why? Because the plant resources, the plant's genetic material is always present inside the seed. When a small sprouting, a small bud grows, when the seed germinates, it's basically containing all the genetic features of the parent plant, right? So storing any plant in the form of seed for a longer time is comparatively convenient, right? Here one word which is also, you can call it seed bank. Sometimes a plant is also restored in the form of pollen and ovule, right? So it can be called as pollen bank too. And when you say gene bank, so now I hope now you understand that any sample that can provide you with the genetic resource to be conserved, right? When you define it, you just write conservation of germplasm. One line answer: conservation of germplasm, right? Uh, what are the advantages? So large number of germplasm or samples can be conserved at once, because you are using a small sample or at the level of cell or tissue. So it's very small in size, you can conserve much germplasm altogether. And another thing is, germplasm in the form of seed bank is comparatively easy, I've already told you. And then you go with the germplasm can be conserved under disease free condition, because it is in your hand how you conserve it. So you can conserve the cells and tissues in a disease free environment, right? Another thing is, those species which are having much threat of being endangered or vulnerability, we can also conserve their germplasm too for future concerns, so that the existence of the species is ensured forever, right? Future research and experimentation, scientists, they keep on doing researches on these genetical resources only in order to generate a better variety of a particular animal or plant, right? The last word here is cryopreservation. Sometimes it comes for definition. It is the process of, in general, if I tell you, the conservation of germplasm is the common word here. It's just a name of a process, right? Conservation of germplasm at a very low temperature of minus 196 degree centigrade, and this temperature is basically of liquid nitrogen, right? And storing any germplasm at this temperature under such conditions basically maintains the viability. Viability means the cells are still alive, they are just being statued, right? When you take them out under normal conditions, they will again be beginning with the point where they were stored, right? Children, here we get over with the conservation strategy, conservation methods in situ and ex situ. I believe that you people understand this. If you have any issues, please feel free to ask me, right? For now, I'm concluding this video. Thank you.